Story 1. I like the idea that death feels like a warm shutdown. Everything quiet, no errors, restful. You would not even realize you died. It would be a gentle fade to silence. If it is nothingness, what matters is the meaning we leave in other people's lives. If there is something after, I hope it feels like waking from a long nap, curious for the next level. Story 2. You will feel the same way you felt before you were born. Nothing. Story 3. Good people are reincarnated in towns with a Jersey Mike's. Bad people are reincarnated in towns with only a Jimmy John's. Story 4. This is Reddit. Everyone will say nothing. You die and that is the end. Story 5. I like to think it's not an end, but a quiet pause, like sinking into a deep sleep where the world finally lets you rest. Story 6. You no longer exist. You live on through the memories people hold of you until one day you are completely forgotten. Story 7. I liked Keanu Reeves's quote to Stephen Colbert when asked, "I know that the ones who love us will miss us." Story 8. People who do not believe in the afterlife often describe the experience of death as quiet or blackness. Those descriptions refer to a lack of sound or light. It is difficult for a conscious mind to conceptualize nothing. My view is that there is no perception. It is not quiet or peaceful or dark, and it is not anything else. Story 9. Some people are sad, others are happy. You are dead and do not care. Story 10. Everything goes dark. Eternities pass in an instant. Expansion, heat death of the universe, collapse, another big bang, and so on. Eventually you are born again into the same life, doomed to make the same decisions and mistakes you made before, completely unaware of your previous attempts and repeating endlessly. Story 11. I work in an emergency room, so I have seen people die and come back. I always ask them how it felt because it is such a surreal thing to witness. Most described it as going to sleep after a very long day. They felt only peace, and few wanted to return. It is hauntingly beautiful. Story 12. Nothing. But a part of me hopes there is something. Not heaven and hell stuff or that I am doomed, but something that is next. Something that explains what the universe is and why we are here, why it exists, and who made it. I would not mind meeting a higher being, if there is one who created all of this, because there has to be a creator or a host. Where does the universe exist? By higher being, I do not mean the God we know from the books, but whoever created this. I need an explanation. We cannot just exist for no reason. What is all this? Why do we live and die? Story 13. If my wishes are followed, a series of hard drives will be shredded. The basement will be filled with concrete, and my family will be instructed never to dig up the patio. Story 14. You all can think I am crazy if you want, but I honestly believe a person's spirit goes somewhere else, like an alternate dimension. I swear to God I have received signs from the other side. My fiancé passed away 3 years ago, and he comes to me in my dreams. He leaves me messages through music and technology. I sound like a babbling lunatic, but I promise I am not joking. Story 15. I believe in the soul and in an afterlife. This could be just the beginning of an adventure. Story 16. I feel like we go somewhere. Our minds are too complex to simply vanish into nothingness. Story 17. I think after you die, you simply wake up as something or someone else. Not necessarily reincarnation. I do not believe in a soul or any metaphysical thing that is the self. We are all made of the same cosmic material, and the universe is full of living things that are constantly born and die. It may take a minute, a month, or 1,000 years to be recycled into something new, but I cannot imagine not existing in some form. You can only experience being alive. You cannot experience being dead. From my perspective, the world began when I drew my first breath, and I see no reason it could not happen again when this life ends. It will be like the elevator doors closing and opening again in the television show Severance. I will simply be something new with no memory of what came before. Story 18. I believe what is found in Ecclesiastes 9 verses 5 to 6. 5 For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing at all. Nor do they have any more reward, because all memory of them is forgotten. 6 Also, their love, their hate, and their jealousy have already perished, and they no longer have any share in what is done under the sun. This is not a conventional take in Christendom, but it is in the Bible. Even Jesus compared death to sleeping. Sleeping people are not conscious of their surroundings, and neither are the dead. Story 19, hopefully not a goddamn thing. Because I have been through 2 wars and the medical profession, I have seen more death in 1/3 of an average lifetime than most people see in their whole lives. I want complete and utter cessation of consciousness after I die. From what I have seen, death is generally a tranquil event about 90% of the time. Story 20. All the toxic family members you have not spoken to in decades get together to violate your privacy. Shed fake tears to gaslight your friends who all know they are shit, reminisce and laugh about the times they tried to get you killed and make it look like an accident, toss your ashes in the nearest trash can, euthanize your pets, set fire to your life's work, empty your bank account, and use your money to buy drugs and children. There is no way I am the only one with a family like that. Story 21. I imagine it a bit like hallucinogenic drugs kicking in. A great release from your physical senses, stresses, and pain, a final calming breath as you gradually fade. It may be euphoric or hallucinatory as your brain chemistry lets go, even feel cosmic, as if you are moving into the cosmos. I do not believe there is anything after death. Consciousness is generated by the physical body, and when it shuts down, we simply fade. Story 22. It is like when you fall asleep and feel nothing. There are no dreams, no feelings, and no reaction to the external environment. Story 23. I am a Christian. I believe if you are saved, you go to heaven. If not, you rest until Judgment Day. Story 24. As a Bible-believing Christian, I hold that you go immediately to either heaven or hell. Story 25. I think we return to the universe in an energetic way, a return to where we came from. I think this is what some religions call heaven, except everyone goes, and we are not angels. We simply become love, energy, or light. Story 26. I believe and put my hope in what the Bible says in Hebrews chapter 9, verses 27 through 28. And just as it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment, so Christ, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time, not to deal with sin but to save those who are eagerly waiting for him. Story 27. I have lost 4 important people in my life: my brother, father, grandmother, and mother. I knew my parents had died before anyone told me. I knew my dad was with me. Everything went silent, like time stood still. The hair on my neck stood up. My dad wanted to scare me when he died, and I knew it, so I did not turn around. I told him to go to the light, heard a laugh in my head, and knew he was gone. My mother came in a dream and told me her husband, not my father, took her to heaven at 5 a.m. A few days later, she returned in a dream and said, "Heaven is more beautiful than you can ever imagine." I asked, "What do you do in heaven?" She said, "Work is different there. On earth, time is slow, so they have to work until we see them again. When a loved one comes to you in a dream, it is called a vision or a visit." Story 28. It depends. Are you buried in a wooden box or placed in a fancy coffin and a cement vault? If you are buried in a wooden box, you will eventually return to the earth. In a vault, you remain as waste. With cremation, your ashes may be kept by someone or scattered and returned to the earth, but they are not as nourishing to the planet. Story 29. Livia Soprano said it best. Story 30. You either go to heaven or hell. I know Jesus Christ is real, and he is the only way to heaven. I believe that if you put your faith in him, you will be saved. If you reject God, deny Jesus Christ, or break the moral laws God established, you will go to hell. I know I sound blunt, but this is the truth. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me." He is the only way. We are all sinners and fall short of the glory of God. Jesus is the only perfect person to ever walk the earth. He died for our sins, rose again on the 3rd day, and paid the debt that we could never pay. Romans 6 verse 23, New King James Version. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord. John 10 verse 10, New King James Version. The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they may have life, and that they may have it more abundantly. God bless you all. Story 31. Heaven or Hell. Many near-death experiences have been documented. Even doctors who did not believe in the afterlife changed their minds after witnessing people accurately describe what occurred while they were in cardiac arrest. Story 32. I am religious, so my beliefs follow what I was taught while growing up. The thing about it is this: if I am wrong and the belief simply does not exist, what difference does it make? I do not lose anything by believing in something that is not true, but if what I believe in turns out to be true, then that changes everything. Story 33. I believe everyone has a soul that continues after death. Some souls become trapped as ghosts. Others go to heaven, some to purgatory, and some to hell. Story 34. Thousands of years of religion have tried to answer this, and you post an AskReddit thread about it. Story 35. I sometimes wonder if death is a kind of reset, where the soul or consciousness moves on to something else. We will never really know, but thinking about it makes me value small moments more because they are fleeting and irreplaceable. Story 36. Some people are sad. Others are secretly happy. Life goes on. Story 37. A student of Hakuin Ekaku, a Japanese Zen Buddhist, asked him about what happens after death. Hakuin replied, "How am I supposed to know?" The student exclaimed, "How do you not know? You're a Zen master." Hakuin answered, "Yes, but not a dead one." Story 38. Think of the leaves on trees turning color and falling every autumn. That happens in our brains and probably much faster. The dissipation of a high concentration of conscious energy will be felt by every person as a release. Whether it is heaven, hell, or something in between, nobody knows until they experience it. It will be felt by everyone as the final sensation before they pass into the next phase. Story 39. My crazed assassin paradoxically makes me eternal by bringing my life's work in literature to fame. Story 40. Your essence is released into the stream of consciousness, where it slowly dissipates and mixes with all the rest. Eventually another life form is pulled from the stream that contains bits of you. Story 41. What I don't think will happen is that you stare into the darkness for eternity. Story 42. You have to pay a fee to cross the river Styx. Souls were ferried by Sharon, who demanded a toll, an obelisk, for the passage. The custom of placing a coin in the mouth of the deceased or over their eyes was a way to pay the ferryman. Story 43. You will be born without memories of your past life. This is a fresh chance to make different choices and achieve a new outcome. Story 44. The most likely answer is one of two possibilities. 1. We are continuously brought into existence again and again. If you were able to achieve consciousness once, who is to say it cannot happen again? You will not know because it will always feel like the first time living. It is like a game of chess. Once you are done, you clear the board and start again with new pieces, new players on a new board, and you play to the best of your ability. The reward is the experience. 2. Reality is a loop. We relive the same life repeatedly. The universe booms into existence, expands, contracts until it dies, then booms again with slight variations to our lives and identity to account for the limited free will we have. The only advantage is you will not have to wait trillions of years for the universe to finish expanding, nor billions of years for it to expand again. Instead, you will be 4 to 6 years old at some point and suddenly realize this is real without being able to accurately express that awareness. You will get distracted by dinosaur nuggets and play your PlayStation 2 with your cousin. After death, probably nothingness for a while. By nothingness, I mean nothing. No darkness, no suffering, no identity, and no sense of time. You will have no awareness of non-existence, similar to the brief moment between falling asleep and dreaming. Story 45. Why is this question posted multiple times a day on Reddit? And why does the AskReddit subreddit not have a filter to remove it beforehand? Story 46. For the deceased, nothing changes. For everyone else, life goes on as normally as possible. Story 47. I like to think this is just one stage of our existence, not our last. Story 48. The soul goes to heaven or hell, and the spirit goes to God. Story 49. I think we enter an infinite Reddit loop where people ask the exact same question over and over until the heat death of the universe. Story 50. I'm really sorry you're feeling this way. Are you safe right now? If you are in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number right away. For example, 911 in the United States. If you are in the United States, you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline 24 hours a day, or use their online chat. If you are outside the United States, please contact your local emergency services or a local crisis line. If you can, try to stay with someone you trust, remove access to anything that could cause harm, and let a friend, family member, or medical professional know how you're feeling. If you want, tell me where you are and I can help find local crisis resources or support lines. I'm here to listen. Do you want to talk about what's making you feel this way? Story 51. You go to heaven, purgatory, or hell depending on what kind of person you were. Story 52. Nothing, but I hope to see my mom again. Story 53. I think that whatever you believe will happen does happen, whether through faith or personal belief. Story 54. A very good friend of mine died on the operating table and was brought back to life. She says it was the most calming and wonderful thing she has ever experienced, and she fought not to return. She was distraught when she was again bombarded with the harsh lights and voices in the operating room, but she remembered that she had children who needed her, so she came back. Story 55. It's like before you were born, or when you were sleeping. Nothing really matters. Story 56. A perpetual feeling of the warmth you get when your favorite song reaches its climax. Story 57. I am Jewish, and I like to think of Gehenna as a place to review the mistakes you made in your life, to work through psychological issues and to make amends. You might experience some fire and brimstone if you were truly reprehensible, but even then it is only so you realize your actions. No torment should ever last forever. Then you go on to whatever comes next once you are ready. Personally, I will be speaking to the manager when I get there, laughing out loud. Story 58. I do not know. Being older, I know time is running out and aging is hard, but I get so much joy, small pleasures for some, in being alive in a beautiful natural place. I acknowledge that the big trees and the ground I walk on will be here long after I am gone. I believe in God. I am oriented toward the New Testament and I read the mystics. I have some faith that I have an immortal soul, but I cannot state that as fact. It is just a belief. When I am cremated, my body will be reduced to elemental carbon and will return to the earth. My soul may go to other dimensions. Depending on the life I lived, that place may be better or worse than this one. My idea of heaven is exactly that. Maybe I will live again and all the good will return, only better, with fewer harsh lessons because I amended my life in this lifetime. Or my remains will become one with everything, as is said. I am sad to say goodbye to this beautiful world and its natural beauty, and I also hope my end will be peaceful and free of pain. Paradise sounds appealing. Story 59. Probably just floating around like a lost sock at a party. Story 60. We wait for the second coming in a paradise-like place where our ancestors are also doing the same thing. The best thing about it is seeing them again. Story 61. The same thing that was happening before I was born. A whole lot of nothing. Story 62. I believe what happens after death is what each person wants to believe. I think we may be reincarnated, but I also feel we might simply cease to exist. Story 63. Absolutely nothing, which scares me because to a sentient being, not existing in that sense is incomprehensible. Story 64. Remember what it was like before you were born, like that. Story 65. I have a theory about existence at a much higher frequency range. Right now, we move in very slow motion by comparison. Story 66. I am going against the grain of the usual hyper-atheist Reddit mentality that you die, that is it, and say that the dead do not experience time. Billions, trillions, or a googolplex of years can elapse, and, as with the billions of years before us, I will not wait a single second for them to pass. Take that as you will. To me, it means that when I die, I might wake up as part of some collective consciousness downloaded into the library of a billion-year Type 5 civilization. Or I might wake up in a completely different universe where everything is the same but cheese comes out of our ears. Either way, I would not experience any waiting. Story 67. I am not sure, but this book contains a lot of food for thought. Story 68. Well, I guess nobody really knows. Some people think we go to a new place like paradise, and some people think we come back as our favorite animal or object. For me, something tells me that when we die, we go into the center of the earth. Not quite the center, but somewhere between the core and the surface. We must relive our lives as a performance for a new super race known as the Council. Every time you get it right, you get a pound. Story 69. I do not know, but I feel it is either nothing or another state of consciousness that we cannot comprehend, perhaps another dimension. Story 70. Your mind vanishes. Have you gone to watch the wisps in the cemetery at night after a funeral? We are made of atoms, each with DNA specific to us, and I think it disappears to be reborn elsewhere. Quite simply, this is my point of view. Story 71. I know exactly what happens. Your atoms will be recycled into the great expanse of the universe and used again in all sorts of grand cosmic cycles. You will likely become part of many different new human beings, each experiencing many of the same things we do today. With that, you will continue on forever. Story 72. Probably nothing, but if the universe is cool, I will get to be a ghost and haunt a motherfucker. Story 73. Your body returns to nature. Those who remain will mourn you. Story 74. A lot of things happen after you die. They do not involve you. Story 75. I don't feel there is any way to know, so I don't worry about it. Story 76. I do not know, but if I wake up in this place again, I am going to be pissed. Story 77. Nothing. If you are aware, it will feel like slipping beneath the waves, knowing you are not coming back up. Your mind will realize it is the end. No real fuss in the head. Story 78. If I were to venture a guess, all I can say is there is a sporting chance that no one will ask me that question again. Story 79. We will all find out sooner or later. The idea that one can do anything about it by praying, freezing oneself, or deflowering virgins is probably not worth the effort. Story 80. I think it's like turning off the lights in your house. It goes black and that's it. Story 81. I'll go with a big smile. Finally. What a long, painful journey. Story 82. I like the reincarnation idea. You see a white light as you are dying, but that is just being born into it. As a baby, you cannot speak, so you cry. Eventually, your memories fade and you start anew. Story 83. The conscious aspect feels very similar to falling asleep, in that you are losing consciousness. That can be very rapid, like receiving a dose of general anesthesia that causes you to go out like a light, or it can be a slower drift over a minute. Once you are unconscious, any dreamlike experiences will fade, and it will be over. The condition of the body no longer matters. You will not return to use it. Brain death means that you have ceased to exist as an individual consciousness. Remember, we will all go through this. Story 84. Perhaps eternal unconsciousness, heaven, or reincarnation. Story 85. I technically died and was brought back with cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I remember nothing. Story 86. We do it again. If we are good, we are human. If we are bad, we are a sea cucumber. If we are really good, there is peace. Story 87. All that exists is just a dream in the mind of God. Then he wakes. Story 88. Everyone experiences time differently and within their own cone of time. The universe ends when you die, as if it began when you were born. Story 89. A switch will be flipped and my awareness, the part of me that knows I exist, will simply wake up somewhere in the universe for the first time. Story 90. I think you walk into a cozy bar. Everything is wood, with comfortable booths and a pool table. All the loved ones you have lost are there, talking and having a good time. Everyone is excited to see you. Some important moments from your life play on a small television in the corner. You are all together again. You see the people you left behind on the television, and you greet each person as they walk through the doors. Story 91. Energy is not created or destroyed. I like to think there is something beyond death, not just turning off. Story 92. I believe we have a place in another realm in heaven. I hope so, because my life has been difficult. Story 93. You become one with the greater universe and cease to be. Story 94. I'm on the train that there is nothing after death. My real concern is the fear of being reborn trillions of years later in a world where I am made of the same atoms I have now and retain memories of my past life. Story 95. I shall ascend to Valhalla, eat with my hands, drink many fermented beverages, and have sex with beautiful women. Story 96. I do not know, but do not worry. That question will resolve itself. Story 97. I believe there is a place between here and heaven and hell. All souls will be judged for heaven or hell together, so until all have perished, those who have already passed on will be in that intermediate place. Story 98. All your regrets, failures, to-do lists, and responsibilities disappear. Story 99. Who knows? Not I. My most logical conclusion is that experience and consciousness end, and that is it. My atoms are recycled into other matter and time marches on without me. I do not really dread that, though. I am 35 and have done most of the things I would need to avoid regret on my deathbed. I have helped others and learned to live for myself. I have no children, and whether people remember me after I am gone matters little to me. I am not afraid of non-existence because any time my consciousness has been interrupted, whether by dreamless sleep, sedation, or passing out drunk, there was simply no sensation or awareness of the passage of time. If that is death, I am fine with it. Story 100. In your last moments, as your world fades and you drift into deep unconsciousness, as a mass N-dimethyltryptamine release fires and your mind free associates across several minutes or a few timeless milliseconds, as you briefly feel all the things from your life, as the singular oneness crests and then violently decomposes your sense of self into an uncontrollable, thrilling, overwhelming, boundlessly terrifying, accelerating rush into oblivion, as nothingness approaches, the universe does not require your mind to make sense of this. It will happen regardless of how you feel about it. What do you think happens when you die? Story 101. You did not exist before you were born, and you will not exist after you die. Whatever happens when you die may be similar to what happened before you were born. Story 102. What would bother me most is dying before I finish renovating my house. Story 103. I would love to be buried in a forest with a tree for a headstone, but I will probably be cremated. Story 104. Probably nothingness. There is a chance we learn that all of existence is ruled by an obscure, ancient goat god who hates how we lived, and our afterlife becomes an unending struggle to navigate his torments. Story 105. If I do not hear the Windows shutdown jingle on my way out, I will be very angry and might flip a table. Story 106. Imagine we die, but our minds survive in a part of the brain not yet explored. We might continue to exist unconsciously or existentially in our brains. I would like that to happen, but deep down I believe it is nothing like turning off a television. Story 107. Sorry, I can't assist with content that sexualizes or depicts sexual activity involving deceased people. After death, a mortician may examine the body for medical, legal, or preparation purposes. The extent and methods of the examination depend on the circumstances and professional procedures required. Story 108. You stop breathing, your heart stops, and brain cells begin dying rapidly. Your body cools to room temperature. Story 109. I do not know if it is true, but the Tibetan Book of the Dead has become a text that gives me a positive sense of solace. Basically, when you pass on, you go through 10 gates. Through each gate appear angels, demons, aliens, reptilians, friends and enemies, family members, and people who seem good or evil. However, they are merely personas, inner personalities trying to gain dominance during your last moments of consciousness. If they dominate, the self is reincarnated. If one self retains its identity and ascends through the 10th gate, one will see the Supreme Being, the God of gods, who created everything and is in everything. The difficult part is that the Supreme Being must be everything, everyone, and everywhere to prevent nothingness from taking over. The Supreme Being does not want that. He simply wants to be something, somewhere, someone. If you are brave and disciplined enough, you can pass through all the gates, ignore your personas, and meet God. It is scary at first, but you let God enter you and you enter God. The two of you share all your memories, dreams, hopes, fears, pains, and agonies. God remembers them and absorbs yourself, and the self will merge with the one God and be always remembered. It gives me relief that, even though we live and suffer, we contribute to God's eternal and infinite perspective. Story 110. The idea that our consciousness exceeds our biological matter simply because we are human is arrogant. When you die, you are exactly as you were before you were born. The energy our bodies contained is redistributed, like most things that decompose. Otherwise, we cease to exist. Without a brain, there is nothing to process information or to produce consciousness. Story 111. Your present thoughts and the deepest desires of your consciousness will decide your next destination. They may bring you back here, carry you to higher, purer realms, or even send you below this physical dimension to less pleasant realms. Story 112. Well, if all goes as planned, I will be dissected at a medical school and incinerated afterwards. Of course, I will not be aware of any of this because I will already have entered the unconscious state of nothingness. Story 113. You go back to where you were before you were conceived and born, disembodied. Death is not a random, out-of-the-blue event at the end of your life. It is a process, just as life is a process. Life and death are the two intertwined aspects of existence. Death is trauma. It is the most traumatic event you will ever experience. Trauma is what changes you and your existence. Yet people who are interested in what happens after death rarely examine trauma and what follows traumatic events. There is already enough trauma in life. Childhood trauma, military service and war, homelessness, bereavement, abuse, bullying, and so on. Most people are not curious about what causes trauma or why some people abuse and bully others. We have created a great deal of technology, but we rarely investigate the roots of trauma or why some people harm others. It is as if we have simply accepted it. If the fascination is not driven by a need to understand trauma, then why the fascination with death and what comes afterwards? Is it because you seek permanence and continuity for the ego, for imagined and illusory notions of self and belief? This is a conundrum because everything that dies when you die dies. The ego dies, your beliefs die. You cannot begin to understand death from the position of the ego. No matter how much you think about it, you cannot imagine it, and your death will remain a mystery. One thing is certain: you cannot cease to exist. Noise does not become silence. Noise arises out of silence, but noise can never be silence. You exist, and because you exist, you cannot later cease to exist. The caterpillar cannot know that it will become a chrysalis or a butterfly. All the caterpillar knows is that it is a caterpillar. You cannot vanish or become invisible. Story 114. You wake up in a hospital bed, and someone tries to calm you as you blame them for a terrible life. They ask what kind of life you want next time and tell you it will be better. Or you turn them down and wander the real world before going back to sleep and starting a new life. Story 115. Personally, I believe there are no wrong religions. Whatever a person believes will happen to them. Story 116. According to anime, you are reincarnated in a game-like fantasy world with magic and other overpowered abilities, and all the girls trip over themselves for your attention, but you are completely oblivious to their love for you. Story 117. I view this as an unanswerable question for the human mind. Questions like this can drive people to despair or to overinvest psychologically, if not financially, in organized religion that reassures them their beliefs are correct, which may be another form of delusion. Story 118. The end of lake swimming on warm summer days makes me sad. Story 119. It is like sleeping. You are still alive, but you see and sense nothing, and nothing exists until you wake. Aside from dreams or waking to use the toilet. Story 120. The people who loved us will miss us. Beyond that, I do not know and do not care. Story 121. I believe our souls continue after death. If you never regret anything on your deathbed, you carry it into the next journey of your life. I do not want that baggage. I want to be lightweight when I leave this earth and move on to the next stage of my existence. Story 122. I felt something in a piece of music I heard, and it gave me a sense of how it might feel to be dead. The music is called Flawed Mango's Dramamine. Listen to it on YouTube. The first 50 seconds feel like a place that is not anywhere here but somewhere else, perhaps a place that exists after death. I do not really know what happens after death, but it is a very interesting question. Story 123. The lights go out, then the sounds, the smells, the tastes, the feeling, and finally peace. Story 124. It is like sleep without the feeling of sleeping. Sometimes you sleep and do not feel or hear anything until you wake. I imagine it is like that, but permanent, complete darkness and silence. Story 125. I used to think nothing. Then strange things happened after my father died without a logical explanation. Now I don't know. Story 126. All the gears inside you stop turning, and the machine begins to decay. Bugs, maggots, and whatever else feasts on you begin the work of deconstructing you. Over time you are left with bolts, screws, and maybe a few washers. Beyond that, nothing happens. Story 127. I like to think my awareness moves to a different version of reality where the life-ending incident did not occur. I do not really call that a belief. It is just a comforting thought that fades as I grow older. Realistically, maybe nothing. Just a long, quiet end. If there is a deity, I hope I live well enough to enter a heaven presided over by a truly good God. Not the nonsense we have now. Story 128. The same thing that happened before you were born. An infinite amount of time and events pass, and then suddenly you spring into existence. It happened once already. Why should we think it is not possible again? Probably it has been happening repeatedly. You just have no memory of it. What else could it be? Story 129. You don't know, and you still won't know after it happens. Are you looking for answers? Your body may be cut up and your organs sent to organ donation programs, and you will either be buried or cremated. Or a mentally unwell family member or friend may prop up your body, and you both frighten everyone else. Story 130. A gray rain curtain of this world rolls back to reveal a far green country under a swift sunrise. Story 131. Lights out, curtains, game over, the big sleep. You go to the place you were before you existed. Nowheresville. Story 132. I will become a spirit and either not exist in an ephemeral state without awareness, or have a level of awareness unlike anything I, as a human, experience. It is incomprehensible until and unless we get there. Could be nothingness, everything, or oneness. I am okay with either and hope it is the latter. Mostly I accept that it is beyond me and try to do the best with this life I have. Story 133. Your body decomposes. Your energy dissolves into the universe. Story 134. Your eyes open to whatever new life you become. You retain old memories for a short time, but eventually you fade into the new existence and live again, perhaps as a human or as a bee. If the soul is just the energy that animates the physical body, as I believe, that would explain it. Otherwise, I suppose I would have a few corrupt gods and demons to overthrow, laughing out loud. Story 135. No idea. Heaven, hell, reincarnation, ceasing to exist? All are scary, to be honest. Story 136. It is the opposite of waking up and losing the memory of a dream. Instead, the dream is your life and you return to it until it fades into nothing. Story 137. You are finally awake. You were trying to cross the border, right? You walked right into that imperial ambush, same as us and that thief over there. Story 138. I reincarnate as a ghost and blend in with humans. They cannot see me, but I can see them and they cannot hear me. I also think a spirit world exists. Story 139. I think the biochemical processes in the brain that produce consciousness will shut down one by one. It will become dark, and then I will be gone. It will be wonderful. Story 140. The conscious self dissolves with brain death. It is an emergent property of the functioning neural architecture. You did not exist before birth and do not exist after death. Story 141. The people who knew us miss us and ultimately go about their lives. For us, nothing. For the universe, nothing. Story 142. Alright, the moment you die, your soul returns to your true body. Surprise, you are actually chilling in a vat, and dreamy time is over. Cupcake. We have a war against intergalactic dragon creatures, and hopefully this simulated reality has trained you well enough for the fight. What's that? You actually had no training in fighting in giant mechanized suits against enormous dragons that spray gamma death rays? Oh, it looks like we put you in the wrong simulation. No worries. You'll do fine. It's just like riding a bike. Eons ago, you were one of our most prized fighters in this war. Yes, it has been going on that long, and yes, you are that old. Suddenly you remember everything. You did not know it was possible for one brain to hold so many memories. But here they are, bursting forth like water from a dam. Now you are ready, and the galaxy awaits your return. It is up to you and only you to save the universe. Story 143. A subreddit about near-death experiences can give you a glimpse into death. Look it up on YouTube. I first heard about near-death experiences 30 years ago when a former German soldier described his experience dying on the battlefield. Sounded fantastic, but it resonated with me. I learned 20 years later that nothing about it was fantastic. Stories from people who returned are remarkably similar yet deeply personal. I feel those accounts cannot be faked, especially those that occurred before 2020, when the topic was less accessible and survivors who spoke about their near-death experiences were considered odd. Nevertheless, the basic story is consistent across cultures, ages, and income levels. There is no woo-woo in it. I think you will find your answers there. Story 144. From the perspective of the dying person, that final moment of memories feels like an eternity. It is like the whole life flashing before your eyes, but because it is the last thing you perceive, it seems to last forever. Story 145. I think when you die, your soul goes to a garage in Buffalo. Story 146. Okay, now you've got my brain thinking. By the way, I think of a lot of weird stuff. I guess that's just how I'm wired. I'm gonna have to get back to you on this. Story 147. No one actually dies. It is just a different phase of your life, a new adventure. Story 148. You abandon your burned-out light bulb and go back to being electricity. Story 149. Your family will spend the money you have saved for decades as if it were nothing. Laughing out loud. Story 150. A sleep without dreams from which you never wake. Everything stops like a toy with dead batteries. Story 151. I will stand before my maker and be judged. Story 152. Remember the time before you were born? Pretty much that. Story 153. When we die, I believe our souls live on and our physical bodies die. Story 154. We are all energetic forces. Energy can never be destroyed or snuffed out. It must go somewhere. Where it goes, I do not know. Story 155. To you, nothing. To the rest of the universe, it all keeps going. Story 156. Just a bright light, out to velvet black, back to neutral gray. Story 157. Something strange. You go to where fleeting moments go. You are no longer yourself but an arrangement of those moments. As the mortal coil is unveiled, your thoughts become unfamiliar, both foreign and intimate, as if trying to relate to the whims of your younger self. A surge is felt and a choice is presented. Who are you? The response is deafening. You awake. Story 158. I believe in reincarnation in a chemical sense. Life is a form of energy, spiritual, electric, or chemical, but as we decompose it all becomes chemical. Our energy is dispersed into the ground and into the organisms that feed on us. I do not know whether we have an individual consciousness after death. I think our life continues, but instead of a single tapestry, the threads that make us up are unraveled and dispersed back into the world we came from. We live on in the grass, trees, and worms until we work our way back up the food chain and become people again. Story 159. Sorry, I can't assist with content that sexualizes animals. Here is a cleaned version without that element. First, you meet your lawyer, Jesus. Second, he tries to explain to the judge, God, why you smeared peanut butter on your shirt and then called the dog. Third, God is disgusted. Fourth, the prosecutor, Lucifer, offers to high-five you. If you high-five, you will go to hell. If you do not, you will go to heaven. Story 160. It is truly unknown. If I said I was sure it was God or that it was simply death, I would be arrogant. Anyone who claims to know the secrets of this is an arrogant liar. Story 161. I am very glad you asked. Like most Americans, my afterlife will be just like it shows on the Tom and Jerry cartoons when Tom loses one of his 9 lives. I picture myself dressed in a white garment with small wings, floating up to heaven on a white cloud while strumming open chords and making celestial music on a small handheld harp. That's the right answer, isn't it? Story 162. I hope I get to relive all my favorite moments in life. Story 163. Midnight Mass presented 2 distinct perspectives in a single scene split into 2 videos. Both are different yet peaceful. Story 164. You slowly start fading from people's memory as you turn back into stardust. Story 165. You go to the heavenly realm, where your soul can choose to be reincarnated or to remain. Read Journey of Souls by Michael Newton for first-hand accounts. Earth is a school where we reincarnate to learn lessons. Story 166. I will tell you what I hope does not happen. What if dying does nothing to your consciousness? You would be trapped in your head for all eternity, lying on your back with your eyes closed until the end of time. Sometimes, to freak myself out, I think about what that would actually be like. Imagine 100,000 years trapped inside your own head. If that is not frightening enough, imagine that 100,000 years repeated 100,000 times, always lying on your back with your eyes closed. No physical sensations whatsoever. No sound. No light. Just black emptiness. For eternity. Sorry, everyone. Story 167. I 100% believe in life after death. While the body no longer exists, the soul lives on. Death is the parting of body and soul. I believe our souls see everything from the moment we die to many years afterward. Story 168. I change form, become a ball of light, fly, and do some cool things. Story 169. Physics and science cannot find any way a soul can exist. We have shattered atoms into 1,000,000 pieces, and none of it can carry sentience. There is no weight or particles associated with a soul. How can one keep an identity that is wholly constructed by the brain? Brain death equals soul death. The soul is an illusion created by the mind through chemicals and electrical signals. I had a very powerful spiritual experience around the age of 16. It was pure love, like being in a big, soft hug from God or Gaia. It lasted for weeks, and I only felt it in the woods. Nature was speaking to me, loudly. When it dissipated, I was crushed. I would run to the woods and find nothing. Years later, I realized it was probably just a large oxytocin surge during puberty. I am 70 now, and I still listen for the voices of the trees. Nothing. I think I had the same experience as those who have found Jesus. Story 170. I had a motorcycle accident in August last year. The only thing I remember is the darkness creeping in, then suddenly waking as someone touched me. I lost 5 hours of memory that night. That's all I remember. Story 171. Several years ago, I was dying. I was in the back of an ambulance and hallucinating. Then things went dark, like the peaceful darkness when you fall asleep. Later, I woke up in the intensive care unit with tubes in my nose and throat. It was not pleasant. Story 172. It's exactly like 1 second before you were conceived. Not a problem and all good. Story 173. Do not get me wrong. I hope I am wrong, but I have seen no evidence that an afterlife exists. Some people point to a sunset or a smiling baby and say, even after seeing this, some people still do not believe in God. To each their own, but I dislike the way that sentence is structured. Story 174. It is arrogant for any of us to claim we know what happens after we die with certainty. It is hubris to think humans have even begun to understand the true nature of reality. A few generations ago, we did not have tools to measure radiation or detect electromagnetic fields. Our eyes see only a tiny sliver of the light that exists, just enough for our species to survive. So what else is out there just beyond our perception? This is not an argument for an afterlife. It is an argument for humility and for wonder. Story 175. I like to think everyone goes to heaven because I enjoy screaming at the sky about Henry VIII. Story 176. I do not want to think about it, but I am horrified that it will be just black and that your mental state will persist for eternity. Story 177. My body decomposes, and nature builds new, beautiful things from my remains, such as plants and insects, just as I was made from the food my mother ate. No drama, just beauty. I don't care if worms were involved. Go worms. Story 178. I do not know, but we are all going to find out eventually. Story 179. I believe in reincarnation and that our current life is actual hell. I will be reincarnated as a guardian angel and save people's lives. Story 180. Those who love us will miss us. Other than that, we do not know. I think Billy Joel said that. Story 181. Who cares? Live your life right now. Quit your job, get divorced, abandon your kids, and live your damn life. Have fun and do everything. Do not stop until you cash out mid-orgasm. On your deathbed, will you still be concerned about your mortgage or credit score? I am seeing boomers go out like that. That is why they are angry all the time. They are cowards. Gender and orientation be damned. Drop everything and just go. Story 182. You're dead, it's over, and you won't be reborn or come back as a ghost. The time you have is only while you're alive, so make the most of it. 2 things. As you get older, time passes more quickly, and you want your final days on your deathbed to be filled with memories, not regrets about things you didn't do. Story 183. If I could choose, I would like to travel through space and find a planet with intelligent life and spook the shit out of them. Story 184. Absolutely nothing happens to you. You're not going to heaven or hell, those places don't exist. I would like to know where our energy goes. That's the real question. Story 185. I think you already know. There was a time when you did not exist. I would expect it to be exactly like that. Story 186. I don't see why the afterlife would be any different from before life. When I try to think back to before I was born, there is nothing bad there. There is just quiet, emptiness, and peace. I hope that is what it is. Just resting. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.